Is Rob Edwards coming under serious pressure now for you?
I actually feel like the Green Army have actually bought into Rooney.
Did I see this morning that Birmingham City were keen on making a move? So it's Real Madrid, Man United, Man City, and now Birmingham.
All the big names of European football.
This is my theory. Watford are good this season because... Hello guys and welcome to the Sportsman Untitled. I'm Simon Lillibury and today I'm joined by Stephen Allen and our new weekly expert, Gab Sutton. He's here every week now, resident guest. Gab, welcome again to the show. How do you feel about being a permanent member now of the Sportsman Untitled team?
I'm delighted, Simon. I had some demands in the contract. Joey Barton not being invited was one of them. But no, great to be on and looking forward to getting stuck into it.
We're going to talk about the Championship as always. Got midweek fixtures to look forward to as well. But we're going to reflect on the Championship from this weekend and some really sad news to start with the news that West Bromwich Albion fan Mark Townsend passed away at Hillsborough. From what I've read, a fan was trying to resuscitate him in the away end. Didn't quite work out. It seemed like there was a slow reaction to it as well from the members of staff and stewards, and they didn't quite get the game stopped. It's a real tragedy to lose a fan like this, Gab, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think condolences, I think, on behalf of everyone here, really, to that person's, to Mark's friends and family. And I think it does put football into perspective. But I think it also shows how important it is that we, as a sport, maybe become a bit more aware of some of these issues and actually making stewards, for instance, more sensitive to these sorts of situations, because it might only happen once a season in the EFL, but that one time, you know, the response to it can make such a difference. And unfortunately, we've lost Mark Townsend, but hopefully some lessons can be learnt. And
you see now kind of stupid defibrillators and all of these things around the grounds. It seems like it's quite a safe place to get medical attention, but there was clearly something missing this week at Hillsborough, which led to the death of Mark.
That's it. The resources are out there, and I saw Saturday morning Sky was sort of pushing like a CPR campaign of what to do in these sort of situations, and it's really important that people know that it's got to get the airtime, and you can try your best, and unfortunately so few people will ever be in this situation. You might not know how to react, you might be in shock. The people there obviously tried the best, and it's a difficult situation. It's a societal problem, it's not just a football problem, and unfortunately it's something that we hear of every few years, and it's just not very nice to hear, is it?
I think there was Chelsea. Her name was Chelsea. Sorry, the West Brom fan who was resuscitating him or trying to. So that was incredible bravery from her in that kind of situation. Unfortunately, it kind of didn't go away in that situation. But yeah, a really important kind of topic we have to talk about, and hopefully things can improve and people can be more aware of that kind of situation. So a bit of a very sad start there to the podcast, but we'll talk about the football now, and let's talk about the West Brom game. They kind of fell to their first defeat at Sheffield Wednesday. I was kind of impressed with their mini comeback they had to get it back to 2-2, but then losing it late on. Gab, what kind of did you make from that? Josh Maja, another goal for him.
I know, and another assist for Tom Fellows as well. They seem to be doing it every week, don't they? So great individual stats for them. I think Carlos Corberán felt his side couldn't quite get to grips with Sheffield Wednesday, and I think we've seen with Wednesday, when they're at their best, they can be a very strong side. I think actually the couple of performances leading up to that West Brom game had suggested they weren't far off that kind of result. But yeah, I think from West Brom's point of view, they possibly just couldn't quite get to grips with Wednesday's patterns of play.
And Wednesday were pretty impressive, scoring 3 goals against West Brom there, Steve. Danny Roll, he was not under pressure at all, but it had been maybe a slower start to the season than many people expected in terms of results. This is kind of a big statement win for him.
Absolutely. He set himself up for a lot of expectation this season with the way they ended last season. Obviously, that sort of run from when he was appointed, and it was obviously a horrendous start last year, and he ended the season in form that would have seen them probably get the playoffs if he was there all season. And that does raise the expectations a bit. Maybe it's a bit of a false reading in the table. I think they're about 14th, 15th.
I think they're better than mid-table, sort of bottom half.
I definitely agree. We're sort of looking at the notes of what we've got to come. We'll touch a bit on that later, but definitely I think it's a bit of a false reading where they are right now. I think give it another month, give it another 2 months, and see where Wednesday are. I think they'll be up and around the playoffs.
Absolutely, a team that's not started well. Again, another team with high expectations. Still come back to you on this one, Luton Town. I mean, I don't think anyone saw a shocking start to the season coming. They did reasonably well in the Premier League. They've lost again this weekend. They can't seem to get going. I mean, Is Rob Edwards coming under serious pressure now for you?
He is, and it's part of it's unwarranted because a lot of last year was about how Rob Edwards was building a team that could go back down to the Championship and compete at the top again. And for me, I just think they're missing something in that midfield. They seem to get ran through quite easily. And looking at Rooney set Plymouth up with 3 midfielders on Friday, and it was sort of just get like Nakambas on the bench, and you can see what he did. Did he play for Villa? I think he did play for Villa. Yeah. I've sort of remember him playing for Villa and just sort of in that number 6 role, just sort of playing between the defenders, keep the tempo up. 2 in midfield isn't enough when you're playing a team with 3, and 5 at the back. Just get that defender out there. Mengi can be part of a 2. Just get Nakamba on the pitch, get 3 in midfield. I think that's Rob Edwards' future. If he's got to turn it around, I think that's how they fix it.
Yeah, I agree. I think I also agree with Steve about maybe moving to a 3-man midfield. You could possibly go from, as much as Drotkin's losing a centre back, you could also go to a 3-5-2 possibly and have a more conventional front 2 of Carlton Morris and Elijah Adebayo. But I also think I also have some sympathy. I think there is a tactical element, and the midfield I think is valid. But I also feel a little bit for Rob Edwards in the sense that Elijah Adebayo's had so many chances so far this season, and you just think if he'd been able to put away, 1 or 2 of them, there's 1 or 2 results that could have possibly gone a little bit differently, and that's the kind of fine margins that managers are working on. So there's a tactical component, and I do think that Rob Edwards has got to make 1 or 2 tweaks, but I don't actually think Luton are that far away, and I think with the right tweaks they'll put a run together certainly once Adebayo catches fire.
Talking of the front 2, I mean, Carl Morris and Adebayo, we've waxed lyrical about them over the last few years. They did well in the Premier League. I think Carl Morris got to double figures or very close to it. Is it just individual misses? Why aren't they scoring enough goals?
Good question. I think, if you look at big chances created, I think Luton Town are right up there. So that suggests they are creating chances, especially with their wing-backs, Rule Walters and certainly Alfie Doughty, who I think is one of the best wing-backs in the...
Most chances created this season, I think.
Perfect, thank you. So that kind of highlights it, that the wing-backs are doing their job, but I think there's something amiss a little bit in midfield. I think Rob Edwards has played more of a 3-4-3 this season rather than a 3-5-2, and it's looked a little bit lopsided to me. So I think they go to a 3-man midfield, stick 2 up top, get the wing backs high and wide and get crosses in and have that solidity in midfield, and I think that'll be right as rain.
And we've talked a little bit about Wayne Rooney and Plymouth, but probably their best result of this season. They've put into a few decent performances as well. Is he kind of doing better than we all thought? Is it for you, a Man United fan? He's obviously been in for a lot of criticism as a manager so far.
I've seen him at his best, but Birmingham was not his best, and that's unfortunately the reference point everybody had of him going into this job of sort of, is he ever going to do it? He sort of was Derby.
Did more damage at Birmingham at St Andrews than he did as a United player.
He really did. He really did. But yeah, he's looking at him. I think Rob Edwards said after the game, Rooney gives Plymouth clarity, and you can see it in the way that they play. It sort of lets the individuals shine, and at the moment you can beat teams like that. It's early in the season. If you take a chance early in the game, then you don't know when your next one's going to be because you force the opponents to come and play you, and that's what Plymouth did. And they were nice and direct. And Ibrahim Sissoko, great game, really good game,
unbelievable.
Like that third goal, what a finish! Like it just sometimes you got to just give it to the player and go, fair play, mate, great finish. That's how you win a game.
And home form. And home park, especially on a weeknight or a Friday night, is such a tough place to go in the Championship. It kind of kept Plymouth up last season, and it's going to be key again. Yeah,
it feels like they create a real siege mentality at home park because their home record over the last few years has been very, very strong, and I think it's one of those unique grounds in the country. And yeah, I think Sissoko was absolutely on fire. I think Rooney mentioned it was difficult to tell him that he was on the bench at the start of the game after the way that he's been playing. But it shows Rooney is able to think a little bit about the big picture and keep players fresh for the first sort of 3-game week, if you like, of the season in the league. But the one for me was Adam Randall, because Joe from Off the Line blog, I don't know if anyone's come across him, does some brilliant stuff, and he was very much big on Adam Randall when he's playing for Torquay United in the National League, on loan from Plymouth Argyle, and since then he's gone absolutely from strength to strength. So and he's absolutely bossed it on Friday night, I thought, Adam Randall. So fair play to him.
Brilliant.
Do you think any of the sort of talk around Stephen Schumacher might be putting a bit of pressure on Rooney to get results at the moment? It's tough, isn't it? Because obviously Schumacher was beloved at Plymouth for what he's for the record and how well he did. And
yeah, I mean, I actually feel like the Green Army have actually bought into Rooney, and you've kind of got to credit them, because I think it would have been very easy to come in with, you know, what people like me are saying about Rooney's time at Birmingham and sort of feel a bit apprehensive.
We all said it.
But,
We all definitely said it. Yeah.
But I think they seem to have gone with it and embraced Rooney, and I think that's certainly admirable for them as a fan base. And also, I think Rooney having a full pre-season has probably helped. A full pre-season to recruit players, not something he's really had in his domestic managerial career yet, and maybe he's seeing the benefits of that.
I'd also say that the first spell, we've talked about these first 7 games, this was the key moment for Rooney, wasn't it? If he'd have 1 or 2 points or a couple of points and been in the relegation zone at this stage, then those conversations start to mount up. Or you look at a replacement like Schumacher, and maybe that becomes more tempting and you can pull the plug on him. He's, for me, got through the most difficult spell, not in terms of maybe fixtures, but in terms of just getting that kind of monkey off his back. He's kind of proven himself.
Get the buy-in from the fans as well.
He's going to have a couple more months at least. He's going to be in charge, hopefully, over this kind of first part of the season. And let's see where Plymouth end up, because I think he deserves massive credit for taking that job, first of all. We've seen other kind of big name former England players from the golden generation not jump in. He's gone down at Plymouth, which isn't the most fashionable job in the Championship. He's gone, I want to prove myself, and I think he deserves massive credit for doing so.
Yes, although there's a certain amount of benefits that he's got from his playing reputation or to get that job, which he wouldn't necessarily. Yeah. So I think it works both ways. But yeah, he's certainly put himself back in the hot seat again, and seems to be doing a decent job so far. So fair play to him.
Let's talk about Blackburn Rovers, because they're still undefeated in the Championship. Wow. They're joint second. I don't think any of us saw this coming. I think I might have said they're going to finish bottom this season. I think maybe you might have said the same thing.
I think with that recording day when we did those predictions in that early episode, that was we got a bit too excited.
It was a bit sunny that day. I think I might have had heat stroke.
We were all getting too giddy. We needed to calm down.
They've been the surprise package, I think, for the season for me. They've been so good. John Eustace proven himself to be a top manager, but their squad, I think, like individuals they've seemed to have recruited really well as well. Yeah,
absolutely. I think probably benefited against QPR on Saturday from facing 10 men in the second half after Varane got sent off just before half time. You know what it's like to have players sent off before half time, don't you?
Know it well, know it very well.
But I think Blackburn benefited from that in the second half. But then Todd Cantwell came off the bench and really changed the game. And I love Cantwell. I think Yuki Ihashi's looked a brilliant signing for Blackburn Rovers. And Lewis Travis as well has been a real driving force in that midfield. He's a stalwart now. And I think John Eustace has spoken really glowingly about him as a person and how great he's found it working with him. And he said he's got the respect of the whole building. So it's people like Lewis Travis that have kind of kept Blackburn Rovers going, even while they've got those off-the-field issues.
And you look at a player like Travis, it's almost like a bonus for Eustace coming into the job, because obviously he had the getting loaned out under Yondal Thomas, and there was obviously kind of personal issues there going to Ipswich. And then he's come back in, and you've got like a ready-made captain there coming into the midfield, and he's really helping them out, Steve. But let's talk about Todd Cantwell, because it's a really interesting signing from Blackburn. He was obviously this great player at Norwich. We saw him score goals in the Premier League. He was really a real threat with Pukki. And then he kind of went to Rangers, things didn't quite work out. People kind of wrote him off a bit. People speak of attitude issues. He's a great footballer for the Championship. Is that all Blackburn need?
I think so. I think that you saw it with Blackburn sort of don't mind getting behind a bit of a talismanic figure if they can score the goals, get the assists, get the crowd up on the feet. And a club like Blackburn really needed that this season, because they were not very optimistic headed into this year. And you see him sort of get the ball. He's got the low socks. He's got the long hair. He's sort of, you can enjoy watching him play football. He likes getting stuck into a tackle, and he's exactly what Blackburn needed to really inspire their season. And the cross for Danny Bath over the weekend is such a good example of what he can do when he applies himself. Maybe using him off the bench a bit more, like they did over the weekend, is how you use Todd Cantwell correctly. Because you saw him against Preston, he sort of got caught up in the weeds with some of the defenders, and he wasn't as impressive. But he turned out to be not the match winner, but certainly one of the biggest contributors. There we go.
It's Monday morning.
There you go. It's a Monday morning.
And should we now start to change our expectations for Blackburn this season, or is this a case of them just getting points on the board early to avoid relegation?
I think probably more of the latter for me. I think they've had a great start, and I can understand why Blackburn fans are getting excited. You want to get a bit excited as a fan. You don't want to be too sensible. You want to kind of embrace the dream and the journey. But at the same time, I think for Blackburn Rovers to make sustainable, real progress over the long term, they need new owners, really. And so until then, as dull as it probably sounds, it is just a case of consolidating themselves in the Championship and making themselves maybe a more attractive proposition to potential buyers. And I think the great start they've had certainly doesn't do any harm with that.
You look at sort of some of the owners that have come into the league in the last few years, maybe more reflecting on Ipswich's owners of when they got involved, and they're looking at them as a club and seeing what resources do they have at hand and how good's the team already, and sort of seeing that you've already got players that you can build a team there. If Blackburn can push the boat out a little bit this season, I think if they can be not on the beach, but if they're happy with their season by in April, I think they've done a really good job this year, and I think they deserve sort of that summer rest and sort of reset. Hope to God there's going to be new owners that can properly look after the club, and yeah.
I can't believe 7 games in, they're second in the league, and you're talking about them being on the beach by April. Come on, Steve.
But that's what I mean. As long as I think a lot of Rovers fans would be happy with the mid-table. I genuinely think they would, and they should be, because like I said, it was so dire at the start of the season. There were so many problems, not just with the men's team, the women's team, the entire club. Get some new owners in. Rovers will be back. It's the longest. It's the best start to a season since 1994-95.
How did that one end?
We all know what happened then, didn't we? So
bring back Shearer et al. One team that isn't going to be happy with a mid-table finish, Leeds United, march on again. Another big win this weekend. Still favourites for the title. For me, probably the best team in the league. I do think they'll end up in the top 2 this season. Their recruitment again this summer, let's go back to that, because they lost Somerville, they lost Archie Gray, and Daniel Farke seemed to found these replacements. I mean, Ramzani, he was superb this weekend in person. He's had a really good start to the season, and they're just kind of marching on, doing really well.
Nice pun there.
March on together.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting about Leeds is they've lost these star players like Archie Gray, Crescencio Somerville, Jorginho Ruta, and yet they've become a better team collectively. And I think they've found these sorts of marginal gains where one thing they've recruited well in the attacking areas, they've got a whole new front four. Maja Joseph almost feels like a new signing because he didn't start a league game last season, was more use off the bench. But him, you've got Brendan Aronson, who was out on loan last season. You got Willie Nonto, who wasn't really in their best 11 last season, but he's becoming more like the player that we sort of expected from him last season. It's completely Ramazani, you mentioned, completely new front four, but the synergy, it's all come together straight away. And I looked at Leeds last season and I felt like it's give the ball to Somerville, whereas this season I feel like they've got a really sustainable way of creating chances organically, and it feels like at any moment they could create a chance just because of this. I think Bogle coming in at right back's been great. Firpo's upped his productivity. They've got a bit more creativity in midfield by the looks of things. It just all amalgamated, and this is more like the Daniel Farke side that I recognise from his time at Norwich than maybe last season. So yeah, every credit to Daniel Farke, doing a brilliant job.
And Willie Nonto, I mean, we saw him kind of break through in that Premier League season where he kind of burst onto the scene, and we saw him kind of play so well. He seems to have a bit of a quiet season, like you mentioned last season, but I mean, to watch him in person, he's unbelievable when he's on the ball. Like, so good.
He could be a starter for Italy's national team. Like, he's that good. Like, he's an unbelievable footballer. He's so direct off the wing, and this is sort of going back to this is an AFL podcast, but going back to seeing Leeds at Old Trafford, I think 2 years ago now. He scored within a minute because all he did was pick the ball up, saw that the fullback was slightly out of position, cut inside him. Fullback's miles away. Centre-back doesn't come across the cover because we were playing the inferior plays at the time, and just hits it, just bouncing before the keeper's hand, and it goes through, and it's 1-0 Leeds inside just a matter of seconds. And he's got that ability, the explosiveness off the wing that can really replace Somerville. He could even eclipse Somerville's effect of what he's done to Leeds. And looking at the options in the box that he can play off, Pirro's definitely stepping up. I think it's a bit of an audition between him and Nonto to replace Rutter and Somerville, and that's going to go on all season, because you look at someone like Matteo Joseph said, first few games of the season, you're looking at someone that could be a player of the year.
Well, Joseph, for me, it's his running power and it's his selflessness as well, because he likes to make runs away from the general direction of play, and that creates brilliant space for the likes of Aronson, Ramazani and Nonto to really capitalise. So I think Matteo Joseph's a brilliant system player for Leeds United.
agree with that. And Bamford can't even really get any minutes
No,
this
I'm
season.
not
That
sure.
shows their quality.
Yeah, I'm not sure Bamford gets in their best 11 this season.
Do you get a move in January, maybe? Anyone needing a striker?
I'm not sure. Not sure anyone would have him, really. I know that sounds a bit harsh. He's a goal scorer, but probably big wages for the Championship. I don't think a Premier League club would come in for him. So I think he's kind of stuck with him. But it speaks to their quality of the Leeds squad.
Sounds like a Wrexham or Birmingham City move to me.
You can just link anyone with Birmingham, can't you? Let's move on to section 2 here. The Championship table is shaping up. Top 6 at the moment reads West Brom, Sunderland, Blackburn Rovers, Burnley, Leeds, Sheffield United. How many of that 6 do we think will be in the top 6 come the end of the season? I know it's early, and I know we like making predictions, but who for you there would you say should finish in the top 6 at this stage?
I think 4 teams, to give you a number. Sunderland, obviously, because I'm a Sunderland fanboy. Leeds United, definitely. I think they get top 2. Who is the other team?
Sheffield United, Burnley, Rovers and West Brom.
West Brom, I think, get top 6. And then I think one of the other 3, maybe Sheffield United.
Okay. So you're less keen on... We've talked about Blackburn already, but Burnley... We speak about the Scott
I think
Parker
Burnley
impact.
finish outside the top 6. And a bit of a shout to that, but I'm not sure they get top 6.
Do you think that's really giving you the feeling? Anything you've seen so far?
I think they struggle, for my eyes, to break teams down. So I think they had a great start away at Luton when they faced a side that was kind of wide open and they could play those long passes down the sides and just open them up straight
also
away.
with that game though, there's got three of the goal scorers left, didn't they? Because that was the first game of the season where they had the Premier League squad, and then they had that last couple of weeks of August where they basically lost 4 or 5 of their starting 11, didn't they?
And then I know it sounds like they beat Cardiff 5-0, but like the first hour of that game wasn't necessarily great, as odd as that sounds, and it was kind of like a flurry of goals in the last half an hour. But I think that when you play Burnley and you're really tight and you're really compact, like Oxford have been, like Blackburn were with 10 men, like Portsmouth were, and Burnley only just got a winner in the last minute. I'm not convinced that they really find the solutions to unlock teams. I think that's going to be a problem for them. And I think over the course of the season, that could be their unveiling. But plus, I've got some reservations about Scott Parker and his man management style and how that's going to translate in high pressure situations.
And for you, Steve, out of that top 6, are there any you're big on, any you're weak on at the moment?
I think Rovers are leaving out eventually. I think it's just natural. I think it's not the deepest squad, and injuries might happen, and they'll sort of, as we discussed before, sort of get mid-table. I think is what I think they'll end up with. I could see Burnley falling off, like you were saying. Scott Parker. Is anybody massively sold on Scott
What
Parker?
do you think of Hannibal Medbury, Steve?
Oh, that's tough, because I remember when he came to Birmingham on loan, and I tuned into a lot of the Friday night Birmingham games, as the season would be known. But he's very excitable, but he probably needs to work on what area of the midfield he wants to be in. He looks like he could be a 6, but then he hasn't got the discipline to be a 6, because he likes to go out and tackle, but then he goes forward. At academy level, his best trait was you could give him the ball from a defender and he could run it to the edge of their box every time, and he's unbelievable at it, and he would win you 12 fouls a game and get.
He's got bags of energy as well, hasn't he?
He's a really good player, and he just probably needs the right manager to sort of just go, calm down, you can lead the team in this way, and this way in a game. When we're losing, don't do 2 of them. Something like that. So something where it just nicely limits him, nice and simple. Keep him to... I would probably play him as a 10. Probably. Like in that Burnley system, and play him behind a striker.
I think he likes that freedom, doesn't he? Whereby you can sort of give him that freedom to drift around. I think Parker would probably want his 2 central midfielders to be a bit more disciplined, but I think as a 10 you're able to...
He likes getting on the wing. He's got a decent cross in him as well. He's got a decent long ball. He can switch it well. And... just let him free roam. He can control the midfield. If you've got 2 of the midfielders with him, happy days. You've got a bit of cover, haven't you? So
I think I'm in the same boat as you in terms of West Brom, Sunderland, Leeds, and Sheffield United. I'm going to put in, because I think they've just got such a good squad. They've got Premier League quality players throughout that squad, in my opinion, in terms of like Arbuster, Paymer, O'Hare's class, Ahmed Tozic. They've got so many individual talents, and I think Wilder, unlike Parker, I think Wilder can put a team out to win the majority of games in the Championship.
Well, do you know what I think? So I cards on the table here. I put Sheffield United in the bottom half for my and I'm slightly regretting that. But I think what I probably underestimated is it doesn't, in some ways it doesn't matter what people like me think of a manager. It matters far more what the fan base thinks of a manager. And I think a bit like Neil Harris at Millwall, who we may come on to, it's like we can have our own objective opinions on their careers and what they've done in the last few years and but actually if the fan base are having them and if they're buying into their ideas, that makes a massive difference to the energy of a club and the positivity around the place. And I think that was the case at Sheffield United, and maybe it's one of the reasons why some of their late recruitment has been able to settle as well as they have. I think that Callum O'Hare and Gus Harmer have got a bit of a bromance. So, no, so I'll give you some time to grieve. But yeah, I think that they've got a great understanding already. And I think for me, Sheffield United, their best 11 is actually looking pretty strong. Big question is, can they avoid injuries and suspensions and that kind of thing? I think
their recruitment impressed me in the fact they were able to keep players like Hamer and the fact they went out and got O'Hare and Burrows. And you look at that and you think, I expected them to lose a couple of key players and they haven't, and that makes such a difference. You're right in terms of maybe squad depth is lacking, but for now, it's looking pretty good for Sheffield United. My
little hint of what I'm going to make a bit of a bold prediction.
Go on.
Yes. End of the season, playoff, 3rd versus 6th, Sheffield derby. I think Wednesday could just cut into that 6th place for the playoffs.
Oh, now you're talking.
I think there's something in that team where once they're on a roll, they're very difficult to stop, and momentum is everything in football.
Is that pun intended?
I wish it was. I'm not that good. but yeah, like I said, they've got such a very positive way of playing. The players clearly enjoy playing that way, and I think once the season gets on a roll, get past January, see where they are. I genuinely think they.
That's one of the wilder predictions. That
we're on
this
fire.
Is terrible.
We're on fire.
This is terrible. Let's talk about Sunderland, Gab, because we have to talk about them every single time you're on, because you predicted them to win the league.
That was part of the contract, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. They've actually lost 2 of their last 3 games. They did play well at Watford this weekend. Came up short, late penalty, I think. Have you got any concerns about them, or is it just one of them performances is still reasonably good?
Yeah, I think second half was improved for Sunderland, definitely. I think the slight question mark for me at the moment is at home they've been able to implement this really aggressive press and a really strong structure out possession, which has given these super prodigiously talented individuals the platform to shine, and that's why they've got maximum points at home. I think on the road they've been a little bit more cautious and they've not been able to implement their pressing game as well, and maybe that's why they've been caught out a little bit. But without that sort of rash moment from Dan Neil against Quadro Bar at the weekend, they probably would have got away with a point because they're good in the second half. Wilson Isidore, the forward they've brought in from France, looks like a really strong addition, so that's a big positive. But I'm still flying the flag for Sunderland, but they've got to maybe fine tune things away from home.
Any concerns, Steve, for you on Sunderland in terms of this is still Regis Lebrie's first season? He's had a very, very good start. He's got a very young squad. We're coming into a period now as after a couple of international breaks, it's going to be the Christmas period. There's going to be a lot of fixtures. Any concerns for you after this amazing start?
Not massively. I think Watford aren't the easiest team to go and play away from home, and Tom Cleverley's getting a very nice tune out of them. We saw them display possibly to a wider audience when they played Manchester City in the Carabao Cup the other day. They're a decent team. They can hit you on the counter. They can play around the pitch very well. And I think just Dan Neil just got caught a bit of a silly tackle. It's one of them things that happens. Like I said, a young team, they're a bit naive. They'll learn from it, and Regis will learn from it. The players will learn from it. I don't think it's a big deal.
Watford are good. This is my theory. Watford are good this season because they've gone back to red shorts. Yep. I've said it for years.
Sleeper.
Watford should not be wearing black shorts. They should be wearing red shorts. No surprise. They've gone back to red shorts. They're winning games.
Yeah. Would you take Chris Rigg at United then?
Yeah, I think he's. I would say if you were able to get Angel Gomez in the summer, Chris Rigg would be your second port of call. I think, because I think you could get him at a price that it's not. You're not taking someone for cheap off a club that might need the finances more than you do.
Oh, we're talking at least 30 million for Chris Rigg.
I agree.
I'd say like 30 rising to like 50 without.
Yeah, 30 without
quite possible.
And percentages.
Quite possible, but the Angel Gomez thing is he's going to be on a free in the summer, and that might that might usurp a deal to United. But there's plenty of clubs that are going to need a 6. I mean, City could get him in January, couldn't they, really?
Yeah, well, he's playing
Rodri
as a 10 for Sunderland, actually. So, but he's a very versatile midfielder. He can play lots of different plays. He's just such a I mean, all the clubs across Europe were looking at him in the summer. And for Sunderland to get him penned down to a 3-year deal was a massive statement. And they've got an enormous asset on their hands. I think Chris Rigg could be anything he wants.
We're talking about breakout stars. Let's move on that individual player. I think we could talk a bit more about Chris Rigg, actually, because did I see this morning that Birmingham City were keen on making a move? So it's Real Madrid, Man United, Man City, and now Birmingham
all
as
the big names of European football.
He has been probably the best.
There's just no chance that we'd be able to get him. Just absolutely no chance he's dropping down to League One.
He could be a big Patriots fan. You never know.
Yeah, how big is Tom Brady's pool? We're not too sure. Are there any other kind of breakout stars for either of you, individual players who have kind of come to the fore this season, maybe surprised you? I mean, Mateo Joseph is one who I wasn't sure he'd be Leeds' number 9 coming into the season, but Farke's gone with him. Importantly, he's stuck with him and kind of benefiting from the results. Even if his individual output isn't massive, he's helping the team.
Do you know, I'm really big on centre forwards who not necessarily scoring goals, but doing all the graft, and because I think it's such an important part of like the overall requirement of a centre forward nowadays to bring everyone else into the game. And I think Mateo Joseph does that really well for his age, considering he's only 20. So yeah, I'd probably go again to Sunderland with Jobe Bellingham as well, because some of the bits of skill that he can produce in games, you almost see a bit of the Zidane sort of jump on the ball and twist with it and that kind of thing. So he's a very skillful midfielder, and I think again he's having a massive season.
Real Madrid coming calling in 2 years' time for the
Bellingham brothers.
Well, it would allow the Mark Bellingham, and to sort of not have to switch between Real Madrid and Sunderland. I think you'd probably want to be spending your time in Madrid rather than love Sunderland, but it's an area. But Madrid's slightly preferable as a tourist.
Madrid's probably better than most places in the country, so it's not offensive. Exactly, it's not offensive. Don't worry.
Thank you.
Saving you.
Steve, any individual kind of breakout stars for you, or ones we've already mentioned?
Just solidified by the weekend. Just Josh Maja is just really good to see him scoring goals again. I think, as you alluded to with Mateo Joseph, with the selfless striker, I think Maja's got a bit of a selfish streak in him, and that's good, because there's a lot of strikers now that come up and they're sort of like the 9.5, so to speak, that people try and say, oh, that's why he's not scoring, because he's a 9.5. But Maja's sort of in the box, killer instinct, drill the ball low and in a corner, keeper's probably not going to get it. And it's really impressive, because his move to France didn't really work out as he wanted it to.
Well, he used his false 10 then, wasn't he? So.
Yeah, there you go.
I think if you look at his runs, I mentioned this before, his movement in the box is up there with Joseph, I think. I mean, you look at the movement he makes and the way he knows where the ball's going to fall. He's got those goal scoring instincts, hasn't he?
Definitely. And Stoke last year only scoring once. It's unfortunate, and obviously he's already eclipsed that by miles, and he's eclipsed his Fulham record as well when he went on loan there. So it's good to see him back in scoring. People have got a nice bit of goodwill to him after seeing what he did especially in Sunderland released the documentary, and he was sort of the kid that had to go and prove himself in Europe, and it's just nice to see him back and doing well.
Lovely stuff. And a bit of a negative one here, but which manager has to tactically improve over the next few weeks, Gab, for you?
I would still say Rob Edwards. I do have some sympathy with him, as I mentioned earlier, because his sides haven't put away their chances, and that always makes life harder for managers. But at the same time, I'm not sure I agree with how he's set his side up so far this season, and I think it's going to take 1 or 2 tweaks to just sort of redress that balance a little bit.
For you, Steve?
My answer was also Rob Edwards. Just get 3 in that midfield. I think that's just the solution to what they need. Teams get ran through too easily nowadays because they want to make sure they're solid at the back, be solid in the middle.
It doesn't have to be too complicated, and they've got better players than a lot of the opponents they're facing. I think it's a case of keeping it simple, really. Yeah. Right, section 3 of this podcast. It's a new thing we're doing. Gab's Corner of Concern. A team or a manager or a player you are slightly concerned about this week from the Championship that you are concerned about?
Yeah, Coventry, I think not to
No, deserve it. Go for it.
Yeah, okay. I hope. I think the majority of Coventry City fans are with Mark Robins, because we're talking about a manager who's delivered extraordinary results for 7 years, and I think when you've got that 7 games, you should be able to kind of see past that. But I think there is, speaking to one or two who are a little bit apprehensive perhaps about the start to the season and would have wanted a little bit more given a lot of signings in the summer. I think last season they made some progress in some respects, despite having finished in the playoffs the year before, because they lost key players and they actually became better as an all-round team without having those star individuals. And I think Coventry fans were maybe hoping that they could be able to kick on this season, but it's another poor start to the season that's kind of giving them a lot of catch-up in terms of the top 6 conversation.
I think there's been money spent, and obviously big money from the Okeres and Hamer deals, but it's not been spent around the entire squad. Like, midfield is so lacking. We've been waiting for Sheaf to come back. He made his first start at Leeds. He was off it, to be honest, but we were crying out for a midfielder who wasn't bought in the transfer window.
Missing a general in there, do you think?
We're absolutely missing a general. We've lost McFadzean. We've lost even the likes of Liam Kelly, Matty Godden, who have played hundreds of EFL games. Yeah. And we've got a team of kind of 23, 24-year-olds, and they don't have the nous to win games at the minute. And
can Josh Eccles find that in his game?
He's been our best player this season.
Right, okay.
He's been the only one who's kind of trying to do that, but he's still only, I think, like 24, and he's not like technically the greatest footballer in the Championship, but he is trying to become a leader. I think Sheaf's return will hopefully help that, but I think if you combine the loss of key coaches of Dennis Lawrence and Adi Vivash, the fact that we didn't bring in a senior assistant manager, it feels like Robins is kind of now an isolated figure on the touchline. It doesn't feel like he knows his best team. I think we're chopping and changing the defence, we're chopping and changing the goalkeeper. And we've got 2 home games now coming up midweek against Blackburn and then Sheffield Wednesday.
To stay in after that performance at Elland Road.
Yeah.
Really?
He made a couple of good saves, but if you look at the second and third goals, I think he should save both of them.
I've seen Leeds fans say he was man of the match.
Yeah, well, they had about 10. They had about 10 shots. I don't think he was. I think when you sign a goalkeeper who's very highly rated in Dovin, I think you have to just play him.
I mean, we're looking at a change of model, aren't we, at Coventry City? Because I think for much of your Championship tenure, it's been a case of you've got your stalwarts who are experienced, your sort of grizzled veteran, battlers kind of thing. You've got a few loanees, and then your star players like O'Hare, Gyökeres, Hamer. It's been a change of model where I think that the net sort of potential of the squad in terms of permanent assets is a lot higher, but there's something about the synergy or the dynamic of the team that's missing a little bit, because you've not got, dare I say, almost your Jamie Allens or your Liam Kellys, who might not necessarily jump off a page, but are the ones who sort of set the culture or create a kind of togetherness, if you like, or cohesion that allowed Coventry to sort of perform above the sum of their parts. But maybe it's just a case where you bring in an experienced centre-back and a bit of a midfield general, and that's going to make a difference. But
there's been a lot of conversation about Matty James, who's still a free agent, and we had him on loan at one point. Obviously left Bristol City, I think, this summer, but it seems like Doug King, the owner, is so stuck to his model at the minute of bringing in permanent signings and hoping to make money on them. We've seen like Norman Bissett sign 19-year-old striker who we're pretty certain to make money on at some point. But those are long-term assets which aren't helping us right now. So I think there's kind of a disconnect right now between what's going on the pitch, and I just hope it's not Robins who kind of pays the price for a few issues behind the scenes and the players. But he does need to find his best team.
So who's replaced Adi Vivash then?
So we've got, we don't have an assistant manager right now. We have a team of coaches in terms of, we promoted John Dempster and...
he was Mansfield Town manager a few years ago.
Yeah, so he was involved with the youth team, and a guy called Delaney as well, who was involved in the youth setup, and we kind of promoted them from within. So we've kind of got 4 coaches at the minute, and it feels like there's been a lot of chat online about too many voices, too many cooks spoil the broth, whereas Adi Vivash, obviously old school hard man, you knew what you were going to get with him. He left for one reason or another, but also the loss of Dennis Lawrence can't be overstated.
I know that John Dempster is quite a soft, sort of lenient man manager. So if Adi Vivash was very hardcore is that old school? Old school, sorry. Then Dempster is definitely a different sort of man management quality, because there was reviews of that at Mansfield.
Well, yeah, as I say, there's 2 big home games coming up, and I think it just needs a couple, 4 points would do, a couple of wins just to kind of relieve the pressure, get us away from the bottom 3, and then Robbins can look to build. But he needs to find his best team.
Do you know what? I've got a question for you. Would you understand it if Mark Robbins felt a little bit betrayed by I don't know if betrayed is the right word here, by how quickly it's taken a section of supporters to turn on him after everything he's done for the club and the legacy that he's built, and we're questioning that after 7 games? That feels...
Yeah, 100%. I think that's kind of the modern way with football. I don't like it. I think it definitely is a minority of Coventry fans, and obviously online they are maybe more vocal than what you see. I think the atmosphere at the CBS, and people are still singing his song, One Mark Robbins, and people are still behind him. Even at full time against Leeds, where we had maybe 1 shot, they were getting clapped. People were going like, come on, we want to sort this out. And there's that demand for it to be sorted out because people want him to succeed. But I look at the list of managers available, and I look at Mark Robbins, and I imagine if we sat Mark Robbins, how quickly he would be snapped up by another Championship team. I think he deserves at least kind of the first portion of the season. We've started the last 2 seasons slowly, finished in the playoffs, reached an FA Cup semi-final. Like, slow starts aren't an issue. It's just the fact that this slow start has things going on in the background and has the feeling of we don't have those potentially star players to drag us there. And there's issues in midfield which I don't think are easily solvable until January. We need Ben Sheaf to come in and play every minute and get back to his best, which isn't a guarantee with his injury issues. So there's concern, but it just needs a couple of results to turn around. Thank you for your corner of concern this week, Gab. Next week, it's not going to be Coventry, though. We can talk about someone else. We're going to finish this week, though, with your Championship treble, because we've got midweek games to talk about. So have you picked 3 teams you want to...
Well, you know me, I'm picking Sunderland. They're home to Derby. 100% winning record so far this season. They've been very strong performance-wise at home as well. I expect them to show their class against Derby.
Are they going to keep the ball in play, unlike Norwich, when they kind of score their goals? I saw that weekend the ref was just kind of let out of bounds balls go, and goals were had by Borja Sainz, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Burnley, I think, beat Plymouth Argyle because I think if they score 1, I think they're the type of team that floodgates can open, and Luca Kaleshe does look quite dangerous at the moment, as much as I have expressed some concerns over Burnley. I think they're better than Plymouth. I actually think Luton are going to beat Oxford. I think because of the quality they've got in the wing backs, and Oxford haven't taken a single point on the road yet. So I'm going with Luton, and hopefully Adebayo can find his goal scoring form.
See how you're feeling about those 3 selections.
I like it. I mean, after the discussion of Burnley, perhaps there's a little bit of a surprise that you went with those, but I could see all 3 happening. I think Luton against it, as well as Oxford have defended recently, I think Luton could pick them apart a little bit, and it'd be a decent game to watch as well. So yeah, I like your picks.
You picked a couple of promoted teams to lose there in the form of Derby and Oxford, but they've both made pretty decent starts, haven't they? Even though
I think you've got to really credit Oxford for their strong home form with 10 points from a possible 12 at the Kassam. Really impressive start. I think they've been rock solid so far. Will Vaulks we've talked about experience in that Coventry City midfield. Will Vaulks brings a bit of Championship nous, which I think you need when you're coming up. So yeah, well done to Des Buckingham, because I think this was a tough assignment, him coming into the Championship. But he really seems to be, I've actually been impressed. I think it was tough for him the first 4 months, and that was part of why I wasn't sure about Oxford coming into the Championship, but I think they're proving me wrong.
Brilliant stuff. Right, we'll be back next week to discuss your treble and how you got on. We'll see if you've got a winner on your hands. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks again, Steve, for joining us as well. Don't forget to like and subscribe to The Sportsman. We'll see you next week on The Sportsman Untitled.